People, hello, welcome back to the AFC Newsday channel. It's a pleasure to have you here. My name's Dan, and we're here for we've got a live episode today and some special guests that we're going to bring through in a second. But first of all, of course, I've got to add my right hand man, Mr. Matthew. Matt, how are you doing?
Great, thank you, mate. How are you?
Mate, I'm well, thank you. I'm well. How are you doing on sleep after last night? Well, this morning's game. Are you
You
doing
know
okay?
what? You know what? Pretty good, to be honest. I slept from about 12 till 3. Pretty classic half an hour later delay, which was a bit irritating, but then went back to sleep, woke up about 20 to 11, and that was that. So near enough my 8 hours. What about yourself?
Oh, mate, I'll say the excuse I'm going to bring up in a second when we get our guest in, but we've got to welcome our special guest. You know, this is a big moment, Matt, because it's our first guest on the YouTube channel. So feel important, person who's about to be added. But honestly, it's a great pleasure to be able to welcome Curran, who's on from the Ball Over Passion YouTube channel. How are you doing, my friend? Welcome to the channel, and you're the first guest.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I'm doing fine, brother. It's good to see both of you. And I did say we'd do this at some point. So when you messaged saying, "Is anyone free?" I thought, what, just kind of see how it goes.
You were there straight away, mate. You replied
Yeah.
to me straight away. No,
Yeah.
no hanging around, ready to go. But yeah, Matt, my excuse is that I set my alarm and then saw the game was delayed, and then I just went back to sleep and just forgot to set another alarm, so I completely missed it. But as you can probably see in the background, I have rewatched it this morning, so I'm up to date and I'm ready to go. So yeah, just kicking it off. Curran, as you're the guest, I'll come to you first. How did you find the game last night? Did you watch it first of all? Did you?
I've watched it twice now. So
You watched it twice.
Yeah.
It's not
yeah,
quite the
I haven't-
Rohan 2.5 times.
No,
is it?
no,
So-
no. I knew we were going to do this, so I thought and plus I wasn't going to sleep, so I thought I might as well watch it back. Look, there was a few things that annoyed me, but all in all, not dissatisfied with that at all. I think obviously the manner of some of the goals was disappointing, but all in all, we dominated most of that game. I'm not going to sit there and pretend that we were rubbish for or we didn't deserve it. We were very much deserving. The press looked good. We were good in and out of possession. I think Havertz had a very good 45, and then Emil had another good 45. Some real standout performance. Timber had a good performance. Trossard, obviously, Saka. There's some really good performances. So not dissatisfied with that at all. I think from what we saw from the United game, we still have some issues in transition. Yes, the last time it was the left-hand side. This time it was the right-hand side. What seems to happen is they kind of pin our eights high, and then there's the space in behind, or basically someone doesn't track back and there's space in behind either side. So it's got to be something that's resolved. I think the easiest solution is to play Rice and Party together. That way you don't have the spaces. But we'll see what happens. I'm looking. That's the main thing I'm going to see at City. What we're going to do in terms of, we can't give Kevin that space. We can't give Haaland that space. So some little teething problems, but all in all, like some of the goals, like the Trossard goals, both of them were ridiculous. Obviously the Saka penalty miss is disappointing, but he hit his own goal very well. And then the Kai goal, perfect. I was saying when we signed him that right hand side cross to the back post is going to be one of his main things that he eats off. And obviously Odegaard got the knockdown, but still very good. Yeah, all in all, quite happy. Just still some transition worries that we kind of need to iron out.
Sure, yeah, and just to bring people up to speed that might not have been able to see the game last night, I'm sure most people have already if you're watching back or if you're with us live at the moment. But Arsenal beat Barcelona 5-3 in a friendly at the SoFi Stadium, which is flipping massive, by the way.
It is, yeah.
It is absolutely huge. But the connection to Arsenal is that the SoFi is the home of the LA Rams, which of course is a Kroenke-owned team, and Arsenal played against Barcelona. And the Kroenkes were there as well. They've been quite in the front of the media this week, which I found quite interesting. At the training game, at the training session with Josh with the two dogs, and Stan was there. We don't see Stan that often, but Stan was there last night as well. And he's signing some shirts, which I found quite interesting because give it about 2 years ago, Matt, you wouldn't have seen Mr. Stan Kroenke anywhere near fans signing shirts, anything like that, would you? And it's come quite a way. And do you almost feel like the fan base? What do you feel like the fan base's relationship now is like with the ownership, Matt? Bearing in mind as well that it was only a few years ago that Arsenal fans were massively protesting outside the Emirates. Kroenke out, all that kind of stuff. How do you feel the relationship is at the moment? Where do you think it's at?
I think it's in a very good place, but I think football fans in general are just pretty fickle when it comes to ownership. It's kind of like when you're spending and when the team's doing well, everything's fine. The owners are fine. There can't be a problem. But the second, areas are wrong in the club, or more to the point, the club just don't spend X amount of money, that's when people have a lot of problem with the owners and stuff. They don't really think about other areas. And I think a huge part of the ownership now isn't just the money we're spending, it's the way we've completely transformed the club in terms of wage bill, in terms of structure, in terms of profiling with a young manager and a really young squad. And I think that's really, really important. And I think me personally, I couldn't be happier with the ownership situation at the minute. And I would expect that, most Arsenal fans would agree with that. I think a few Arsenal fans potentially did have their doubts, obviously the Super League stuff, but not really going to get into that. But they did have their doubts about whether, they would actually spend that sort of money to get us back to the top, or whether they were the right owners for us. But to be honest, ever since Josh and Stan have taken full ownership, they've been really, really good. So I'm really happy with them, and I think fans will be too.
Curran, it seems to be that moment when the Cronkies took full ownership, and I think at the time a lot of people were almost like, "Oh no, it's going to get even worse now." It's been bad under their majority ownership, and now they're going to buy every single last piece of the club. And you had fans that had like a small like 1% stake in the club or something like that were told to sell up by the Cronkies, and it really seemed like a negative at the time, but longer term, Arsenal haven't looked back. And I know again when Arteta came in, initially it kind of felt like maybe the cop-out appointment, and Arsenal have steadily spent more money as well. What's your kind of take on it? Are you along the same lines of Matt? And what do you make of the journey with Arsenal under the Kroenke ownership?
Well, let's be clear. The Cronkies took full ownership in 2018. When we think of the struggles of the second half of Wenger's term, there was always turmoil on the board level from Usmanov and the other ownership model, and it was very much a case of there was a lot of strife because there was too many voices in the room. One thing that you see from Arsenal now, 5 years later, is that there's one vision, there's one streamlined vision, and there's not too many people, putting their 2 cents in. If you look at other clubs, look at Chelsea, for example, they've got 3 sporting directors, and all of them want different targets. It's not like that at Arsenal. If people, because I remember back in the day, if you look at, for example, the 2021 window, when you look at the likes of Ramsdale and White and Tamiyasu and these guys, there was often the case where you look online and the narrative is this a Mikel signing? Is this an Edu signing? You don't hear that anymore because it's quite clear that these are, if everyone in the room isn't happy with the signing, we don't even attempt to make contact with the player. It's that simple. So I think the main thing you can take away from what the Cronkies have done in the past 5 years is they've made it so that there's no room for any lack of accountability, because everyone is on board with every decision. And if you're not on board, if someone's not on board, there's no decision made. And I think it's very clear. It's quite clear that the whole point of Arsenal at the moment, and this is going to be the case in this window as well, still coming, because we're looking at, if you saw Mikel's comments after the game, we're looking at 30 players in the squad that were taken, and there's still going to have to be players that are, either loaned out or sold. And I think the whole thing this season is going to be streamlining. I think that's going to be one of the main concepts this season, because it's going to be a case where you're going to have a lot of players that are going to be having specific roles in the squad. So, for example, you're having guys that come on in the last 25, 30 minutes, or you're having guys start, or you're having guys be a system change. You're going to have players linked together, like for example, Tierney and Timber. I think that would be a link that these guys will both come on together, for example. So I think streamlining, really making sure that there's a vision, and a vision that is carried out throughout from top to bottom. Even the stupid shit that people get annoyed about, the 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 stuff at the training ground, the stuff on the walls, and the dog and all the people around it's very much a case where everyone's kind of moving in the same direction. You come in, this is Arsenal, this is what we do, this is how we do things, and Mikel obviously leads that, but it's a case where everyone knows what the role is and they contribute to that role. Whereas before it was Wenger, everything was Wenger, and then we kind of, what he wanted to do was shrouded by the monetary concerns, or Gazidis would have something to say, or Usmanov would be piping off about, oh, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. It was just, there was too many voices. Now there's all the discussions are kept internally. There's no leaks, so everything is discussed internally, and then a path is agreed, and you go through with it. So I think that's the main change, and that's why I'm much more happy with our model than would be if I was, for example, United or Chelsea or even Liverpool. Like, I think
Definitely Chelsea.
like Chelsea, like, not to go too much into it, but they have Winstanley, they have Stewart, they have Shields. They fired Vival. These guys, they've got 4 voices, and you hear constantly that there's like for example, Vival used to just scout from the Bundesliga a lot. So he wanted guys like Kone to come in. I think Kimmich was a target at one point. Whereas with us, if Mikel doesn't like Kimmich, or Eddie doesn't like Kimmich isn't coming. So yeah, it's quite simple.
It seems like it, not just on board level, it also, it's these kind of non-negotiables across, all the way from the top to the bottom of the club. And, Arsenal just seem to have this, like we've seen with Mesut Ozil and Aubameyang, if everyone's not on board, then, you're out the door kind of thing. And yeah, it was nice to see Stan and Josh in the media a little bit with Arsenal. And I saw that Josh learnt his lesson from a few years ago in the States, and he turned up in an LA Rams t-shirt to Arsenal training this year. They were both wearing their Arsenal caps. I don't know if you saw.
Yeah.
But they were it was nice to see. And I think the relationship's very much going in a positive direction as far as they're concerned. I wanted to talk about, Curran, you briefly mentioned him. But the gentleman on the left here is Jurrien Timber, someone that has looked really encouraging since they came in. I think a signing that almost went under the radar because of how, invested everyone was in the Declan Rice saga. But he seems like a really shrewd bit of business from what I've seen so far. Karen, I'll come to you in a second on this, but Matt, what have you made of Jurrien Timber so far? And for me, again, not knowing so much about him, I was quite surprised at how he started off on the left-hand side, didn't he, last night? But he can also play as a centre-back and as a right-back. What's your take on Timber so far, Matt?
I think Timber's been fantastic, but he epitomises exactly what Arteta wants from his players. I think the best benchmark for this is City last season. You look at their players, you don't have like a huge squad. Of course, we do have a very big squad now, but there's a lot of players who will be moved on, as Curran said earlier. But I think when you look at a player like Timber, as you said, who played left back last night, I don't think I've ever seen him play left back. I don't think anyone has. Play obviously in the centre, off the right, stepping into midfield. When you have players who are comfortable in all kinds of zones, it makes squad building so much easier, and it brings so much variation to the play. And I think when you look at last season, where if one big build-up player like a Saliba or a Zinchenko got injured, it was completely light and day. Of course, Zinchenko's still a super player in build-up, so you'll still notice his absentee. But when you have someone like Timber who shows for the ball so much, he's so comfortable on it. I've been impressed with him defensively as well, really aggressive. In general, you just make squad building so much easier, and the competition for this team is going to be really, really exciting. And that first game against Forest will be a tough one for Mikel. But in a nutshell, on Timber, I've been really, really impressed with him. I've liked a lot what I've seen of him on the ball, and in general, just is, as I say, being comfortable in every zone. But his all-round game has just really impressed me.
Curran, I think you're a bit more clued up on Jurrien Timber than myself in this case, and you seem to know a bit about him from previously. When it comes down to that first game against Nottingham Forest, is he a starter for you? What's the if he is a starter, where's he playing, and where do you think his best position is overall?
His best position is centre back. He said it. It's quite clear that he is. I think there's times where in wide spaces he kind of gets over eager and gets beat, like White he does as well. It's quite funny. They're quite similar in that aspect. Is he a starter? I don't like this word. I'm done with starter. I'm done with.
No?
I don't care anymore. Seriously, there's 18 players. Whichever combination of players will be on the pitch. We're aiming now. The aim should be, and we're doing a video on this in a couple of weeks. I think I'm writing the script now. On the aim now has to be to get 20 to 25 games for every player. That's got to be the aim now. It's not about 38 games. We can't do that again. That's how we've messed up in the past. We can't keep doing it, and we have the squad to do it now. Like, if you look at the bench yesterday, if you take out Holding and take maybe Amario out, take Trusty out, and you put Zinchenko, Rice, and who else is out? Nelson, thank you. Put them in. Like, it's genuinely a very, very strong bench. And it's a strong squad. So I don't know if he starts. I doubt it, to be honest. I think the starting lineup writes itself for Nottingham Forest. But look, I think that there will be games, a lot of games for him in the league, in the Champions League. Whether it be, like I said, a combination where you change system mid-game with Tierney and Timber and make kind of that sort of the three at the back with Tierney, Gabriel, and Saliba, and then go for a Timber and Rice or Timber and Partey pivot. Well, actually, probably will be Timber and Rice because you'd have Zinchenko and Partey surely. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about it. So I think if you're looking at what we can do, and the thing is, I personally would like to see, we haven't seen it in preseason, to get Timber from centre back into midfield, not from right back into midfield. I think that's the better way to go about it. But in terms of where he starts, I think he starts in games where we're not in a Mateta type duel, for example, or someone like we're not in a Tony type duel. We're in a sort of like a Julian Alvarez or that kind of player, a bit more quick, a bit more agile, mobile, because his tackling technique is very clean. He's very good in duels. He's very good winning the ball. He's very aggressive, but he's not like he's not Lisandro Martinez, for example. He's not going to jump and try and stud everyone. So
injure players in pre-season.
Exactly. So we're not looking at that kind of player. He's got a good amount of, I hate to use George's shit, controlled aggression. Yeah. So let's just, I think that's the best way to put it. I think he's got a lot of control. He learns to control his aggression. He's got that kind of mean streak in him, but he's not someone that's going to go crazy, get a load of yellows. So yeah, intrigued by what happens. But I think in terms of Nottingham Forest, I think the back four will probably be White, Gabriel, Saliba, and Zinchenko. I think that will probably be the back four.
I think with Zinchenko, we'll learn in the next kind of week or so if he is going to be that person, starting against Forest, because we still haven't seen him this pre-season.
No.
And, his injury record is a little bit worrying since he's been at Arsenal, but you don't rule him out yet. We'll wait and see, get another season under his belt, and see how it kind of goes from there. But just on a few others, just to kind of wrap up the talk about last night, I've got to say this man was on fire. Leandro Trossard, top scorer at pre-season at the moment for Arsenal. 3 goals I think he's got now, but he got a couple last night, and he's just, he's enjoying himself, isn't he, Matt, at the moment? And he's I think after the back end of last season, he looked like he was really lacking a bit of confidence, especially after the Brighton game when he had a bit of a howler. He just looked like he was lacking a bit of confidence, and he looks, like he's kind of put that behind him, and going into the new season, hopefully, Matt, he can be an important player for Arsenal.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, ironically, you look at his output last season. I think it was like 1 goal or 9 assists since he joined Arsenal. And every time I watch him and what I saw at Brighton and everything, I'm like, shoot more. And of course, instruction to be more incisive and not just waste shots. But his ball striking is absolutely brilliant. And I think last night, obviously, just reiterated that. The goal against the MLS All Stars reiterated that. And I'd love to see him shoot more. But what's even more impressive about him is, obviously, you're talking about a player who's pretty much in his prime, and a player who is so secure in like ball possession. He's just everything, really, to be honest. Like, as I say, his ball striking's brilliant. On the ball, he's really, really tidy. His link up's really, really good. Understanding with teammates is great. I think the fact that you have a player who's so comfortable in so many zones, can play, in the midfield. People have likened him to Santi Cazorla. Can play off the left, which I wasn't a big fan of the way he was being played off the left. But could play as a 9 as well, and he did, I think, play off the left as well last night, and that is clearly an option Mikel does like, and he was brilliant last night, particularly as you say. And I think it's just really exciting to know that you don't just have a ball striker, but you have someone who's really good in possession, someone who's a really good passer, someone who you could just rely on to control the game, and also just be a really good creative output and fill in whenever necessary, which is once again really useful for squad building.
And another man who got a goal last night was Kai Havertz, and he looks like he's, again, slowly, hopefully building up a bit of confidence ahead of the new season after, everyone seemingly wrote him off after one MLS All-Stars challenge. Everyone was saying, oh, what a waste of money after, a challenge like that. But Kai Havertz, Matt, again, I'll ask you on this and then goes Curran after, but are you expecting him to make a big impact at Arsenal this season? And it looks at the moment, doesn't it, Matt, like it's going to be more of a midfield role than a forward role?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think once again with the squad building side, Mikel's been really intelligent to be like, I like this profile a lot, but this profile can also cover in multiple areas. And being that big physical presence, being 6'4", and you saw last night, I think it was the goal didn't actually involve Havertz, but you've seen Arsenal going long a lot more. And when you have a presence like a 6'4" Kai Havertz,
he's a tall man, isn't he? He's a tall man.
Never realised, but when you have that presence, it makes a big difference. And we saw City last season how they had that get out with Haaland, obviously using Haaland in more ways, but having him as that battering ram, someone who you can win knockdowns with, it just gives you a different variation to your play. And that alone, his box runs to the left. I don't know why, I just completely forgot what that's called. So yeah, just either way, those 2 goals he did score were nice. And one thing I've really liked seeing so far is how he's pressed from the front. I think he's been very aggressive, and that's one thing I've noticed quite a bit. I always knew he had it in him at Chelsea in terms of being quite a high presser, but I've seen it quite a lot at Arsenal already. And I've liked his all-round game, his movement, and he's trying to make things happen and getting into the right areas, which seems very natural to him. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of him in an Arsenal shirt, to be honest.
He's deceptively tall, like you, Matt. You're just like, you see you on screen, and then you see him roll up, and you're like, flipping heck, mate, what are you doing up there? I never realised how tall he was, and he really is quite a prominent figure out on the football field. And Curran, just quickly before we start to look a bit more further forward and ahead, Havertz an important player. You think he'll play? He'll be an important player for Arsenal this season. And what are you most looking forward to seeing him hopefully add to the side?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite clear when you pay £65 million for someone, it's not something you're going to play as the end of a bench, are you? He's going to be someone that will be important. I don't know, as I said before, it's going to be a case where he's not going to play every game, but he'll play most games. I think that's the key for a lot of our players this season. And I think the only one, and I think if we're talking about future, I think we're looking at another right-sided forward. I think that will be the last kind of zone we can say we need a rotation in. So, look, it'll be interesting to see how we manage his minutes in terms of Havertz, not Saka, in terms of Havertz. But yeah, it'll be interesting. And the thing is, you asked what I'm looking forward to seeing on the pitch. I think what I was intrigued yesterday is the build-up role switches. We had kept going through Havertz drop, then Ødegaard drop, Havertz drop, Ødegaard drop, Havertz drop. And if you look at Havertz's drops, most of the times he's receiving back to goal, and he kind of just switches it out wide, and he's doing very well in terms of that drop into the pivot or into the three, and then kind of switching out wide. It's only a couple of times, but I was like, okay, there's something there. On the first touch, didn't take too long, didn't get caught out. He scanned properly. Fair enough. That's what you want. No drama. Just get the ball through the lines. But what I'm most looking forward to is what we saw yesterday in terms of back post headers, back post poaches. I think one of the chances we created the most last year is cutbacks. We did create a lot of cutbacks for Ødegaard, for example. I think it's quite clear that his goal output was very much precedented on the cutback from a Xhaka or a Martinelli on the left-hand side. So to get him in those zones, Kai Havertz, will be interesting, and I think will be. I think we'll see an uptick in if you are a betting man, you will see an uptick in white assists from that side if you're getting the crosses in, either to Havertz or even Havertz himself getting a couple of knockdowns like Ødegaard had for him tonight. I think that would be something that he used to do with Werner very well. He used to have that relationship with Werner where Werner would make the runs and he would kind of produce the knockdowns and find him. So I think in the final third, obviously, is going to be the most important thing. But also just seeing a more adapted player throughout the thirds instead of what we kind of got at Chelsea, which was him kind of isolated on his own up top at times. And the last thing, and quite very important, the off the ball work. If you looked at his, a lot of people used to say to me, and I'm not gonna lie to you, before we were linked to him, I just assumed, I just watched like everyone else. When you watch Rivals, it's sort of like, he's messing up. It's just not. It's not that. But when you watch the off the ball work, like, he's very active in the press. He's someone that will go and meet his marker, try and put a duel in, try and get his foot in, do something. So yeah, I mean, that's what you want from someone who's going to be the secondary man in your press, because he'll be either him or Ødegaard switching back up Jesus in that role. So yeah, all through the thirds, much more competent, very good.
Great stuff. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing more of him in pre-season. We've got, we'll start to look ahead now, and we've got some big plans coming here on AFC Newsday. Next week, we won't be in this usual setup. We might have, a bit of a treat for you. That's all I'm going to say. A bit of a special episode and some other content surrounding Arsenal. But we've got the Emirates Cup, which is going to be against Monaco. Matt, looking forward to it?
Very much so. Can't wait to be there, really. I just honestly, after that final whistle blew last night, I was like, just give me more Arsenal. Like, I was fuming with the ref, by the way. Like, I just wanted to see more game time. First off, 1 minute at a time. Sorry, 0 minutes at a time, and there should have been about 3 or 4. Second half, 1 minute at a time, which turned into about 10 seconds, which should have been 4 or 5. So I was like, why?
Some of the challenges last night as well were pretty, like Gabriel Jesus in the first half got absolutely wiped out, and the ref didn't even give a foul.
The ref was irritating me a lot because he was blowing for every free kick. Like, it's a pre-season game, and he was almost setting a precedent that it needed to be like proper physical and aggressive game by blowing every single time. It was just irritating to see.
And the pitch was awful as well, I must say. I don't know if you saw from any close-ups of the pitch, but it's like someone went down the local gardening centre and just got these long, big strips of turf, and then they chuck them on the pitch at the SoFi. And it's been a bit of a reoccurring theme, hasn't it, this pre-season? Lovely and incredible arenas, and then just absolutely awful pitches. But there we go. It is what it is on that front. But yes, we've got something special coming for you on the AFC Newsday channel for next week. So keep your eyes out for that one. Make sure you're subscribed and make sure you're liking videos and giving them a watch. It's always much appreciated. But after that, we've got the the curtain raiser before the season starts. Wembley Stadium awaits for the Community Shield when Arsenal will be taking on Manchester City. I must say, guys, Curran, you're going now, aren't you?
Yep, I am going.
I'm buzzing for this one. It's been a long season. It was a long season last year with the World Cup in between, and just felt like it just went on and on and on. And now we're finally getting to, we've had the break and we've recharged our batteries as well, and we're ready to go with the football. Curran, are you buzzing for this game as well? Get the season back underway, and Manchester City at Wembley, not really a better place to do it.
No, I mean, it's the interesting thing about this is it'll be one of those games where we've stumbled against Man City for years now. We need to get just something on them. We need to put a glove on them. And that's the main thing. And to try and do it at Wembley is always going to be special. So as long as we can control the transitions, we have a chance. I'm not going to get too far into it, but the main thing is just enjoy it. I mean, we're all going to be there, so it'll be interesting to see everyone, and
the whole gang's going there. Honestly, I'm so buzzing. Everyone is going. Yeah. Oh, honestly, I can't wait for it. And yeah, no, just before we'll kind of wrap it up in a second, but just to kind of finally get your thoughts on what you want to see. Matt, I'll come to you first on this one. The Monaco game just before the Man City game. What do you want to see from that one in the Emirates Cup? It's almost chance to win a trophy. But what do you want to see from it? Do you want to see? I mean, I think for me the main thing is Declan Rice hopefully getting more minutes again, isn't it?
I think just same as what we saw against Barca, really. I think the last two games, it was a bit more of a pre-season feel to it, where you sub off a lot of players and you're experimenting more so. But I feel like that Barca game, we had one sub at half-time. We had two subs, or three subs like 20 minutes later, but key first-team players. And then we had two subs at the end, almost just to give minutes to players who haven't had minutes. So I think doing that more, because of how good the squad is, and getting that rhythm with the players we do want to play. I think just finding that balance is important, and I wouldn't really change too much against Monaco for that. And it'll just be nice to be back really at the Emirates. Hopefully more than just that one. Otherwise, although it is looking pretty tough to get tickets at the minute.
Yeah, but, massively. It's really tough. It's really tough. But currently, are you hoping that we might see a midfield of Thomas Partey and Declan Rice for the Emirates Cup? Give them an opportunity to play together. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've got to see it at least once. I think the main thing is we've seen a lot of different combinations. I think that's got to be one that's got to be tried and tested. I think obviously it's going to be very easy just to have as a pivot. Right, you're looking at one of the most complete pivots in the league, if not Central Europe, entire of Europe. What was that? Anyway, the entire of Europe. So you're looking at a combination of two players that can. Thomas Partey a bit more vertical, he can pass through the first phase very well, get the ball out, and Declan Rice a carrier. Both are great defenders, both the ability to cover a lot of space. Both the ability to play through the thirds and go into the final third and contribute as well. So you're looking at two players together that combine and mesh very well together. If we're going to try a pivot, that's the pivot. And even if it's not a pivot, you can play one as an 8. And I say one because everyone assumes it's going to be Rice. It's not going to just be Rice because Thomas can play 8 as well. So we'll see. I think the main thing is I wanted to see from this preseason how Odegaard and Havertz works, and it worked pretty much how exactly I expected. Good on the ball, sometimes really good on and off the ball, but times you need to look at defensive transitions and trying to plug in that fourth gap in the box, if that makes sense, because you have the 3 and then there's always one space. So if there's 3 points on the square and there's always like a fourth one where you're looking to where teams can basically exploit that. Against United, it was the left-hand side. Against Barcelona, it was the right-hand side. So if we can just sort of get both points on the base of it, kind of secure, play just a 3-4-3, I think that'll work very well. So I'd like to see it at least once and tried.
Nice one. Well, thank you very much for coming on today, Curran. Not to give too much away, but we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Matt, thank you very much. Pleasure as always.
Absolutely, likewise.
Glad to have you back after your your holiday. And I think everyone enjoyed the everyone. I think people were a bit upset that you were just no regard for the pod, just lying in a pool somewhere.
Pathetic, absolutely pathetic. I do
Couldn't believe it.
apologise, but
Couldn't believe it. Oh well, there we go. But thank you so much for tuning in. Both of you, thank you for your time. And thank you to everyone that's watched live or is watching back. It's been great to be here and back again. Lots of Arsenal content coming up before the campaign gets back underway against Nottingham Forest, and then we'll have lots of regular episodes as well throughout the season. So make sure you subscribed and liking the videos. You can follow Curran on Twitter. His @ is just there. Matt, you can follow Matt on Twitter. He's not put his @ but I think it's at MattJAFC. Or you've got about 7 different accounts now these days, haven't you? So
The writer
Matt
JFC.
There's 2, yeah. That and the more writer-based one. So
yeah, no worries. Yeah, only 2, not 3. Definitely not 3. But yeah,
Maybe.
Nice one. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and we will catch you again very soon.